Alright, I got my King of Games in 24 wins this season. I actually did have 3 losses during my climb, but 2 of them were at times where it didn't even actually affect the amount of wins I needed to get King of Games. So technically 23 wins is the absolute lowest amount of games you need to get King of Games. So I'm pretty happy with 24 wins. I just had 1 loss where it set me back 1 win, which really isn't that big of a deal. Like the other 2 were directly after rank ups. So yeah, that felt pretty good. So of course I'm spamming games to try to get to 100 wins for all these ranked tickets. I'm kind of running out of time, and I've been testing out some different decks. I didn't actually use Cyber Angels at all yet. I really don't like them in this game. They have like way too many effects going off. It's pretty overpowered. At least Red Eyes can still deal with them, and if you open with an enemy controller, you can deal with them. So let's take a look at the Gemini deck. So I used a few different decks that I'm going to show in this video. So here's Gemini. I like Last Gamble, but some people do like Fusion Time, and I think that is pretty cool. You definitely have to run more big boss monsters. So like probably like 3 Darkstorm plus 1 Phoenix. So him. Look up Geminis. Gemini. So 1 of him and 3 of these would be pretty good. You could also use Fiend Farewell to get him into the grave. And Featherizer is a good card, but a lot of people don't like him right now because of things like Tribute to the Doomed, Soul Exchange, but most of all Cyber Angels. Cyber Angels get to remove him from the field without killing him by battle. And even if they did, you'd end up taking a lot of damage, which isn't the biggest deal in the world, but it could still cause you to lose the duel. But with Last Gamble, as long as you're not reduced to 100 or below, you're still usually pretty happy. So this deck did function pretty well, but there's like one big problem. Like everyone's playing around Wall of Disruption right now, but without Wall of Disruption, this deck doesn't feel like it stalls that well. I suppose I could replace them with, like, let's say I throw in 3 Mirror Walls. 3 Mirror Walls is actually pretty good in this deck. The reason why is because it makes it so we have a bunch of targets for Darkstorm Dragon to blow up. So maybe running it like this would be pretty good actually. Oh. Maybe just have the balance kind of like this. Okay, so like the main thing is Featherizer. If you don't have one of these in your hand, which you do not want them in your hand, you throw them out with Featherizer. I didn't have this card before, but if you get this plus Supervise, you throw it onto Chemi Critter, summon him in attack mode, and then you can send 1 Gemini from your deck to your graveyard, then add 1 Gemini monster to your hand. So you send him out, equip him with Supervise, mill a Darkstorm, either grab a Blazewing or a Heavy Knight. So like Fusion could also be a good way to get your big monsters into the grave. I haven't really tested that much yet. But you can revive them with Birthright or with Blazewing, and of course Supervise is nice for reviving. Like even if you're just like having your monsters sit in attack mode, as long as it gets sent to the graveyard, you'll get to revive, and that's still really good. It's like the main reason why this deck actually works pretty well versus most decks is because Darkstorm Dragon just clears the field of all spell and trap cards by getting rid of one of your face-up spell or traps. Overall, like I like this deck. It is a bit too situational just because of Featherizer, plus a bunch of people running stuff like Sergeant Electro, so it's actually getting pretty annoying to use it. It was fun, but a little too situational. And then we'll also look at Weevil. So Amazonas is actually in a really good place right now. So you're gonna want to keep your half-shuts. You can replace these with enemy controller, but if the enemy isn't running anti-trap cards, this card is actually really awesome with her. So like the big problem with Amazonas is if there's like a decently strong monster but not that strong, and Massivemorph isn't going to be enough to have them kill themselves, then it's probably going to be a problem. So like if they're just sitting at 1550 and attack into you, well, doubling their attack to only get 1600 attack onto the enemy is pretty bad. I mean, for the Amazonas, like overall from what she normally can do. But if they swarm the field with like 2 or 3 1600 monsters and they get wall disruption, she could just start picking them off. And if they're in defense mode and you double their defense, then well, that's a good situation for you. Of course, half shut, it's always a really good card for her. So I do like this setup a lot. If Cyber Angel stays popular, you might have to run some enemy controllers. You could definitely run it over Sphere Karibo. I kinda didn't want enemy controller at first because I was running into a decent amount of Electros, which isn't always a problem, but it is nice to have this in your hand just in case. And anti-magic arrows should become a bit more popular. Yeah, that setup's actually pretty nice and fun to use. And so you saw I had 10 wins in a row. I'm not sure if I'm at more than that, because I wasn't keeping track, but I just sort of copied this deck from Duel Links meta. I'm pretty sure I already had a really similar one, but I did see him using it and I'm like, well, yeah, Draining Shield works really well with it. So you pay 3,000, send out one of these. Well, for some reason I've been extremely likely to start with like 2 or 3 Barrel Dragons in my hand. It isn't that big of a deal if they get out a monster with over 2,000 attack and you block one with this. Then you'll be able to send out a second one because you'll be at 3,100 or higher. So you pay 3,000, you get lower to 1,000, block an attack for 21 or more, you're at 3,100 or more. And it's definitely not bad in this meta. So either you're locking down their wall of disruptions with Sergeant Electro, or you're trying to blow up their back row with Toon Barrel. But usually you'll only have a single monster on the field, or at least that's what happened to me super often. So even if they do get wall on you, you'll go down to 1,800, which isn't the worst thing, because you do have this to boost you up to 2,300. And reaching 3,100 like while you're not lowered, is actually really good too. And everyone's running enemy controller, so that's a nice counter. And then of course Toon Kingdom is super good. Completely counters enemy controller. Normally I'd try to like modify a deck a bit after using it, but I didn't actually see any improvements to be made at the moment. Like normally you really can only get one monster out unless you get like 1 or 2 draining shields off. But it actually wasn't a problem at all. There isn't that many people running monster removal, but that would be your biggest problem. If Cyber Angels do stay relevant in the meta, this deck's gonna struggle with it a lot, because it's not that likely you'll draw one of your Sergeant Electros in your opening hand. Most likely you're gonna have like 1 or 2 Toon Barrels, maybe a Toon Table of Contents. Yeah, it's pretty unlikely. Let's look at some of these replays. So I did have some pretty good moments with Geminis, but oops, casual duels. Alright, so I had a few Gemini duels, but I wasn't that excited about it. So I just decided to make a video about several decks. It was fun to use overall, but there's a ton of people using Mind Scan, so they were constantly playing around my walls, or my Birthright, or my Featherizer. So this is actually a bad opening hand. And he has Electro. Everyone was running Electro this day. And that's unusable. But it is the turn for last gamble. And I have both the big monsters in my hand. I rolled a 1. So that's pretty bad. And he locks Mirror Wall, which I was completely fine with. Alright. So there's the power of Dark Storm. So honestly, if he didn't have Electros, I wouldn't have had to have had both Birthrights on the field. So normally you don't want to have like your own spell and trap cards get destroyed by your Dark Storm's effect. Supervise getting destroyed is great and all, but losing 2 Birthright for that's kind of huge. But I got rid of... Actually, can I look at what he had get destroyed? So, Mirror Wall, Curse of Anubis, and Forbidden Chalice. The Chalice doesn't really matter. I wonder if he could have actually used that to prevent my effect from going off. I feel like that's the thing, so he probably should have tried doing that. This wouldn't have worked. Or actually maybe... yeah, it would have worked. I became an effect monster because I was equipped. So he could have used Curse of Anubis, or actually, he could have chained Forbidden Chalice, and then chained Curse of Anubis to that. And then I would have been in defense mode, and then become no longer an effect monster, and then his Mirror Wall gets saved. Instead he lost everything, and I got to revive. And then he had Lava Golem, so I just lose. Even though I was able to turn that duel around. That's super random in the deck he's using. So a bunch of random stuff like that kept happening. And there was tons of Electros, tons of Mind Scan. It was really annoying to deal with. It does feel like it's gonna become more of an anti-trap meta for at least a little. So hopefully the traps keep Cyber Angels down, plus their nerfs. We'll see though. So now we're gonna go into a Weevil burn deck. Well, technically it's burn, but you're not actually doing effect damage. So, like the main goal isn't really effect damage. Alright, we got our Amazonas boosted, so I'm like, alright, whatever he has face down, I'm pretty sure I'll be able to get through it. And he's playing pretty scared, just playing that face down. So this is actually really bad for him. He just lowered my Amazonas to 100 attack. And I have a half shot. Red Lotus is pretty awesome. But he knew he'd lost. All I had to do was just use my 100 attack Amazonas to attack into his Red Lotus. And then do one more attack with my other Amazonas. So maybe he didn't know he had lost yet, but he felt like he had. So Wall of Disruption can actually help out your Amazonas a lot. And Big Bang Shot can actually be used defensively. But I really do like using it defensively for them to try to attack into something like Karibo. It's pretty fun to do. It is like one of the reasons I do like to keep Karibo. So I believe he's playing Cyber Angels. He didn't open with any searchers, so that's pretty unlucky. Oh, this Alexis music is actually really nice. So he still hasn't done anything yet. So I'm like, what is he? And he's actually Ice Barriers. And he gets a Parasite in his draw. That was the last straw for him. Those Weevil games were fun. I didn't do very many with him. I was just messing around. I also wanted some quick wins, because only being at 24 when you require 100 to get all of the tickets, it takes a while. So you're gonna want to use some decks that you enjoy. So that's why I have a Bakura game in here. But so the Bakura deck is great, but the duels take a while. So I'm pretty sure he was balanced. Let's check really quick. Yeah. He's balanced. Balanced Red Eyes. Definitely was never the best, but it's still pretty good. And it's gonna get nerfed soon. In 2 different ways. It is pretty annoying having to play around Champion's Vigilance. This deck can do it though. It has a lot of things that he'll need to negate or else he'll just start losing. And I believe he realizes that he let a few things through that he probably shouldn't have. Even though like at the moment it looks like maybe he should just let certain things go through. So here I banished a Sphere Karibo using my Necrofear. Of course I figured he was going to negate my Necrofear summon, so it doesn't get to steal anything. Magical Merchant starts the mill. I've got 2 Karibos in my hand, so I'm feeling really safe. And the reason why I banished that Karibo, I get to return him with Trance Fiend. So here I'm like, oh, I hope I mill a Karibo or something I want to return to my hand. And I'm like, actually, I already have enough Karibos. I actually banished the Doomsday. because of how much utility he actually has. Soon you'll see why I actually revived him. Alright, whatever, I let him die. Both of them die. Get to refresh my entire banish zone except the magical merchant because he's light. But yeah, the constant cycling of these monsters back and forth is just too good to not use. And I decided to just keep doing it. He does negate it though. So all that means is the monsters don't return yet. But I have Chaos Zone plus 7 counters. So it'll be pretty easy for me to keep returning them as long as I have a Doomsday in my Banish Zone. Still have 2 Karibos for safety. So he should have probably stopped a Skull Lair or a Chaos Zone when he had the chance. Because at that point I had the constant cycling of Grave and Skull Lair, Banish Zone. There wasn't much he could do at that point. He may have had a card to stop the Doomsday, maybe not. But it was definitely too late at that point for him to make some kind of comeback. 4800 Doomsday plus Skull Lair if he does have something like Mirror Wall. Wall of Disruption wouldn't even be enough. Alright, now we'll see the true power of Feral Dragon. And it has the power of the Toon Kingdom on its side. And it has RNG on its side too. So I had a bunch of duels extremely similar to that. Like a few they fought out for a few turns. But that deck is actually amazing for farming wins really quickly. So like with the other decks, like there can be like a huge amount of fighting and struggles and counterplay. But with that one, you either win quickly or you lose quickly most of the time. And usually it wins quickly, especially if you get a coin flip in your favor. And it's super frustrating to be versing a Toon Barrel deck because they're constantly flipping coins that can really screw you over. It's really effective and really annoying. Yeah, that's all for now.